Chapter 8. Life in Villages and Towns. The use of iron began in the subcontinent around 3000 years ago. Some of the largest collections of iron tools and weapons were found in the megalithic burials. The establishment of kingdoms and empires led to an increase in agriculture and trade. Internal and overseas trade routes opened up. This period also saw the development of numerous arts and crafts. These developments resulted in the growth of towns. Increase in agricultural production. Around 2500 years ago, there is evidence for the growing use of iron tools. These include axes for clearing forests, iron plowshare. Agricultural production increased due to an increased use of iron tools. Iron tools such as the axe helped in clearing forests. This land was then used to produce crops. Certain regions, where the soil was hard, needed deep plowing. The kings of the period also encouraged the building of irrigation works and dug wells, tanks, and canals. Crafts and craftspersons. Arts and crafts also flourished. Each village had potters, weavers, dyers, metalworkers, carpenters, blacksmiths, goldsmiths, garland makers, basket makers, and other craftsmen. Later, when towns developed, some craftsmen migrated to the towns. Clothmaking, silk weaving, and dyeing became popular. Conventing, ivory carving, and beadmaking were other popular occupations. The beadmaking industry was concentrated in South India. Varanasi and Madurai were important centers of cloth manufacturing. Uriyur was a famous center for dyeing. Expansion of trade. As a result of increased agricultural production and the growth of crafts, there was a lot of surplus. Villages supplied these goods to towns. These goods were either used by the townsmen or they were sent to other regions. This led to trade. Merchants and traders participated in both internal and external trade. Trade links developed between the north and the south. India also traded with the Roman Empire. The greater use of money gave a boost to trade. Archaeologists have unearthed thousands of coins belonging to this period. There are also references to numerous trading communities and trade guilds. Craftsmen also formed guilds known as shrenis. Lives of people. We have very little information about the life of the people. The main sources of information are stories from books, the accounts of sailors and travelers who visited different places, sculptures that show scenes from the daily life of the people, and a few archaeological evidences. There were at least 3 different kinds of people living in villages in the southern and northern parts of the subcontinent. In the Tamil region, large landowners were known as Vellalar. Ordinary ploughmen were known as Ujvar, and landless laborers, including slaves, were known as Kadesiyar and Adimai. In the northern part of the country, the village headman was known as the Grama Bhojka. Usually, men from the same family held the position for generations. In other words, the post was hereditary. The Grama Bhojka was often the largest land owner. Generally, he had slaves and hired workers to cultivate the land. Apart from the Grama Bhojka, there were other independent farmers, known as Grihapatis, most of whom were small landowners. Then there were men and women such as Dasa Karmakara, who did not own land but worked on others' fields. The second urbanization, towns and cities. Greater agricultural production, growth of crafts, and increased trade and commerce led to the emergence of towns and cities. Due to the growth of a large number of urban centers, this period is referred to as the age of second urbanization. The literary texts of the period mention many towns such as Kaushambi, Vaishali, Ujjaini, Patliputra, Hastinapur, Mathura, Rajagriha, Bodhgaya, Arikamedu, and Kaveripatnam. Archaeological evidences also reveal that there were a large number of towns during this period. An important town of the period was Mathura. It was a center for numerous activities. Around 1000 years ago, it became the second capital of the Kushanas, it was a political and administrative center. Trade routes passed through it, which made it very prosperous. It was also a religious center and had many temples and monasteries. The craftsmen of Mathura produced fine sculptures. Many inscriptions have been found in Mathura. Generally, these are short inscriptions, recording gifts made by men and sometimes women to monasteries and shrines. These were made by kings and queens, officers, merchants and craftspersons who lived in the city. New Southern Kingdoms. Tamilkam, or the Tamil region, known today as South India, lies south of the Krishna River. It was ruled by the Cholas, Cheras and the Pandyas. The Sangam literature is our main source of information about these dynasties. This period in the history of Tamilkam is thus known as the Sangam age. The Sangam texts. The word Sangam means assembly. About 2200 years ago, there was a gathering of Tamil poets and scholars under the patronage of the Pandyan kings. Perhaps 3 such assemblies were held. The works composed during the first 2 assemblies are lost. The third and the most important assembly was held sometime between 100 CE and 250 CE at Madurai. Over 2000 poems were composed in Tamil during this assembly. Later, these poems were compiled into many books. This is known as the Sangam literature. It tells us about the society and culture of that period. The Sangam texts are the earliest work of Tamil literature available today. The 3 kingdoms of Tamilkam. Cholas. The Cholas ruled in the Kaveri Delta. Their capital was Urayur. The most powerful Chola king was Karikala. He fought against the Cheras and the Pandyas. He even attacked Sri Lanka and occupied a part of it. He constructed many roads and encouraged trade with other regions. Fuhan or Kaveripatnam was an important port city during this period. Cheras. The Cheras were also known as Keralputras. They ruled over present-day Kerala and some parts of Tamil Nadu. Vanji was their capital. The most famous Chera king was Nedanchaladan. He fought against the Cholas and the Pandyas. He even captured a Roman fleet. The Chera rulers encouraged trade. They traded with Rome and Egypt. Pandyas. The Pandyas controlled the region around Madurai. According to Megasthenes, the kingdom was ruled by a woman who had a large army. Neduchazian was a powerful ruler of the Pandya dynasty. He is said to have defeated both the Cholas and the Cheras. He was also a patron of arts and literature. The third Sangam at Madurai was probably held when he was the king. The kingdom was famous for pearls. It exported pearls to Rome. Economy. The kingdoms of the south were very rich. They had abundant natural resources and a flourishing trade. Land was also an important source of revenue. The money collected was used to maintain a large army, ensure good administration, and to give grants to poets and scholars. Spices, especially pepper, gold, precious stones, pearls and fine muslin and silk cloth were exported to Europe, West Asia, Southeast Asia and China. Roman ships visited the port of Arikamedu to exchange goods. The Kushanas. The Kushanas established a powerful empire in North India. They defeated the Indo-Greeks, the Pallavs and the Shaks and established themselves in the region around Taxila, Takshila and Peshawar. Later, they occupied Kashmir, Punjab and parts of present-day Rajasthan and Uttar Pradesh. Kanishka, the greatest Kushana ruler, was Kanishka. He became king in CE 78. He established a vast empire which included parts of Central Asia. Purushpura, modern Peshawar, was the capital of his empire. Mathura was another important city in his empire. The Satavahanas. The Satavahanas, also known as Andhras, ruled the Deccan for nearly 300 years. Pratisthana, modern Pathan in Maharashtra, was their capital. The most powerful rulers were of the Satavahanas was Gautamiputra Shatkarni. We get to know about him from an inscription composed on behalf of his mother Gautami Balashri. He and other Satavahana rulers were known as Lords of the Dakshin Patha, literally the route leading to the south, which was also used as a name for the entire southern region. He sent his army to the eastern, western and southern coasts. Religion. Buddhism and Hinduism were the most widely followed religions. Buddhism was divided into two sects, Hinayana and Mahayana. Hinayana was the earlier and the simpler form of Buddhism. Mahayana was the new form, with many rituals and ceremonies. Most of the Satavahana rulers were Hindus. They worshipped Vishnu, Shiva and goddesses such as Durga. Hinduism by this time had undergone many changes. Rituals, ceremonies and sacrifices became less important. The emphasis now was on loving devotion to God or bhakti. A pure heart was all that was needed to worship God. The teachings of the Bhagavad Gita also became popular in this period. Spread of Buddhism. India's contact with other lands increased greatly during this period owing to the spread of Buddhism. Afghanistan became an important center of Buddhism. The colossal statues of the Buddha at Bamia point to the importance of Buddhism in this region. The region of Bactria and Gandhara also came under Buddhist influence. The first step in the spread of Buddhism to Central Asia was due to the missionary activities of Emperor Ashoka. He sent missionaries to many places in Central Asia to popularize Buddhism. Pilgrims and missionaries from India traveled to China and Central Asia through this route. The famous Buddhist monk, Kumarajiva, went to China and stayed there for some time to spread Buddhism. Emperor Ashoka sent his son Mahedra and daughter Sanghamitra to Sri Lanka to spread Buddhism. Deepavamsa and Mahavamsa are the famous Buddhist writings from Sri Lanka. Other countries such as Java, Sumatra, Vietnam, Thailand and Cambodia were also influenced by Buddhism. The great stupa at Borobudur in Java was dedicated to the Buddha.